Hey, thank you, Matt. Welcome to this session on schedule anything with resource scheduling. Notice the word universal, URS. The U no longer exists in the documentation. They've quietly dropped it. So its prefix is RS, not URS. So this session is really to show you how easy it is to enable resource scheduling on an entity, and then what's actually required to schedule resources successfully. First, a little bit about me. I've been around Dynamics since version 1. Interestingly, I've been spending more and more of my time with Azure, using Azure with Dynamics. And that really helps you when you come to look at things like this, because you understand how what Microsoft is doing underneath the covers, if you know what I mean. So I'm a Microsoft certified trainer. I've trained many people, but I've been spending quite a lot of time with field service. About 3-4 years ago, I got into field service. It's really been my specialist app in the Dynamics arena. So hopefully I'm going to talk you how you use field service, but also really what I think is the true power is the underlying scheduling engine. So first of all, we'll actually look how you schedule in Dynamics 365. So I'm going to show you field service so you get an appreciation of how a user uses it, but then we're going to dive underneath the covers to see how scheduling works. We'll then look at resource scheduling and how we can then enable any custom entity for scheduling. And then I'll give you a few resources and links that you can use. This is going to be fairly demo heavy, and hopefully it'll all work. So first off, we have scheduling in a number of Dynamics 365 apps. We have it in field service, project service automation, and customer service. Field service is where we send technicians out to customer sites. So it's very important that we schedule people. We know how long they take to travel, and we get people, make sure we get people with the right skills who are available. So it looks at a number of different things to schedule the right person. We're delivering service outside. Microsoft then use the scheduling engine within the project service automation, which is scheduling resources for people working on professional services projects. So that's more where you're doing longer term piece of work, maybe a few days of work or a few weeks of work. And then most recently, it's now available within Dynamics 365 customer service. The scenario being where your work comes in. Rather than you going out to the field service, the work comes to you in your office or your shop or your operations, and you're actually managing, making sure you got the right people there to deliver your service. So we're now seeing it embedded in all these different apps, and we're now going to take a look actually how it actually works. So let me just switch my screen, if it's able to. I've lost my session, so let's share my schedule board. So you should now see my schedule board. I'm in field service. What I'm going to be doing is show you the basic process a user goes through, because the idea is to make it very, very easy to find the right person. And you might recognize a couple of people's pictures on here. We're going to schedule them. So the basis of field service is the work order. That's a work order entity. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick, we're going to do some work at, say, the Microsoft store. So they've just raised an issue. They've got a problem at the Microsoft store. It's over in Regent Street in London. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go create a work order. So this is a live demo. We'll see this work. This will be interesting. And because I was watching one of the other sessions earlier and it was very slow, possibly because I've got my screen on, but let's just see what happens. Oh, I love it. Okay, so I'm going to create a new work order. So it's CMUG demo. And what I really like about field service is this: we can go generate an incident type. And an incident type is effectively a template for what I need to do. And it's automatically said we're going to be installing an IoT sensor, and it's generated all the information for me. And I can then just go include pricing, what's needed to be done. And I'm going to go generate that. And it takes a little bit of time because what it's doing is pulling all the information it needs. It's pulling from the account where it's the work is. It's pulling information from different pieces of the system. So what products are needed, what services are needed, and pulling that all together. The reason I'm actually taking a bit of time talking is to actually let it happen all underneath. And we'll see this all being populated. So if I look at this, we see it has some products. We're going to be installing an armband 100. It's an installation. It's going to cost £740. These are the tasks that the technician will need to do on site. And hopefully we have a location, because everything revolves around latitude and longitude. So yes, we're down in the right place. Whoops, I've got a bit too deep. So we're at the Microsoft store. So that's where we need to go to deliver this service. So what I've done is I've created a work order. Now we have to schedule it. So I'm just going to switch to the schedule board just to show you what happens. Okay, we'll now see that work order listed here. It's at the bottom. And if I notice, I'm just going to zoom in on London so you can see this. And I'm just going to click on it. So I'm going to select that work order I've just created. Notice what you'll see is it's just a little popped up. It's showing me where it is. And all I need to do to find who's available, who can do this, is just click on this find availability. And it's going to search. It's going to match the skills, the availability, and other details. What it's done is it's pulled through 3 people who are available. It showed me how long they're going to take to travel there. So all I need to do as a scheduler is select. So I'm going to select Mr. Bibby and say, Andrew, you need to get to the Microsoft store. You've got 18 minutes to get there. And all I've done is I booked that, and that's now booked, ready, available. That'll now go into Andrew's mobile client. It'll tell him what he's got to do next. It'll give him all the information, how he needs to get there, etc. If I just go back to my schedule board, we can now see that on the schedule board, and it's now booked. So the idea is actually to make it very, very easy to generate work orders and then schedule them. What was behind this? When it looked for Andrew, it looked for various skills, because we assigned those various skills and roles that were needed to do the job. And that's why it picked Andrew and Alison and Chris, because they're the ones with the right skills and they're also within the right location. And it also searches within, and it looks at how long it takes to travel. It's using Big Maps API to find that. So that's what we've actually done. Now, what's actually happened underneath? How does scheduling actually work? So let me just switch back to my slide deck. What's actually happened there? Well, there's actually, if you were to look at field service, install field service, you would actually see 2 separate solutions and 2 separate applications. There's field service and resource scheduling. Actually, the Universal has now gone out the app name as well. Okay, and this actually reflects that Microsoft has actually separated out the functionality. There's 2 bits of functionality. There's a bit which is about the field service. It's particularly about the field service applications. That includes things like the work order, which is the work that needs to be done. It extends the product catalog to understand what's a product versus a service. We have that concept of incident type, which is our template for generating work orders. All I had to do was select an install IoT incident type, and that had all the products, services, and service task types, which are the activities that need to be done. It also handles all how much you pay people, both pay the resource delivering the work and also charge the customer. And it also has full inventory management. And then what we have is the resource scheduling app, which is really about the scheduling of the resources. So it's who the resources are. Those are your contacts or people or equipment that can do the work. We have roles and skills, so what skills they have. And then what happens is that when you generate a work order, it actually generates a few entities underneath. It generates the resource requirement entity or records or series of records. So when you actually go and field service does this automatically behind the scenes, there is a requirement created when you create a work order that essentially matches what's in field service. The same is if I do a project service, I go create a project. It creates a requirement. So the common functionality across PSA, field service, and customer service scheduling is the resources, roles, skills, and requirements. Then when you actually make a booking, I booked Andrew, it creates a bookable resource booking record. We have these really long entity names in scheduling. A bookable resource booking is part of resource scheduling. It's not part of field service. And we did all that on the schedule board, which is part of resource scheduling. So let's just have a little bit more deep look at that. So we see there are a number of entities around. So if I look at a resource, so a resource is also known as a bookable resource, depending where you look at it within the user interface. So the bookable resource, that's the people we're scheduling. We need to know where they are because everything revolves around latitude and longitude. We need to know what skills they have, what roles they have, what working hours they have. Okay, so we first of all set up all our resources and what their skills and availability is. Then the scheduling entities. I mentioned the resource requirement. So the resource requirement is what needed to be done. It's actually taken from the work order. When you book on the schedule board, it creates a bookable resource booking, also known just as a booking in certain bits of the user interface. And then there are a whole load of other entities. I mean, there are tens of entities, such as requirement group, fulfillment preferences, and booking statuses. But the main two are the resource requirement. So these are the common entities across all our different parts, part of resource scheduling. And I just want to show you this little data model because I think it's really useful to understand how it fits together. So the work order generates a resource requirement record, which contains all the information needed to book a resource. So it pulls out the location information, the duration, it copies the skills and preferences and roles, but it doesn't have things such as the pricing or the some of the other things that are particular to work on. It holds a subset of the fields, all that's required to do the booking. And when you go click on that link and say book, then a bookable resource booking is created. And so we have these three records all linked together. And you can actually have more than this because you can have bookings over multiple days. You can have multiple, and it also handles scenarios such as multiple, what we call resource pools, resource crews. You got some very complex scenarios in here to book multiple people on the same job or people over multiple visits. But essentially, most time you have one work order, creates one resource requirement, and then you generate a bookable resource booking. And the booking holds information such as when somebody's actually arrived, what the status of the job is. And if you change the bookable resource booking, there's a whole series of plugins behind the scenes that update the resource requirements and update the work order automatically. There's a whole orchestration around these three entities. What's really, really interesting and where the power comes in is I can take work order out of that diagram and stick any other custom entity in its place. And then I can then schedule that entity. This is how it works. It hides the complexity of the scheduling into a common area. So I don't have to do anything that much, just schedule a new entity. I'm going to take you through what's actually required. That's for me is the beauty of resource scheduling. I'll just replace work order with any other entity. So I'm just going to quickly just show you what's in them. So I'm going to go into the resource scheduling. It's what I note I've got is now called, it's called resource scheduling. It's not universal resource scheduling. And we'll have a look at this requirement. So I'm just going to refresh. So this is the work order. So if I actually go into this resource requirement, this is normally in a lot of usage for field service, you never need to go in here because it just reflects. It's automatically updated by the work order. It's created and updated automatically. One of the reasons you never really heavily customize field service is because there's an awful lot of code behind keeping these all in sync. So what we see in here is pulled down bits of information. So it's had the durations got pulled down. If I look at the field service, it's got a link to the work order, but the main details is here, how long it's needed. It's got the latitude and longitude. It's also got some related records. What skills? Where's my characteristics? Characteristics of skills. So it's not just one record, it's actually record with some child records. So here I've got a skill, a characteristic. So I need the IoT skill. It's not just because you can have multiple skills. We may also have roles, which are called resource categories underneath. Now, we didn't require a role for this one. So it's created this automatically. We'll actually see, because I booked it, it's got a remaining duration of 0 because it's linked the bookable resource booking we booked all the time. So we now know that's fully booked. It's got a status on here. We know what's going on. You see the skill there now. There's lots of capability in this. Let's just have a look at the booking record. We'll see that booking. There's my Andrew Bibby booking. Let's go into that. And we can see here it's got a link back to which resource it's being booked. We've got it's scheduled. It's got a link back to the resource requirement. If I look on the scheduling, we'll see it's estimated arrival time. Andrew, you've got less than 10 minutes now to get there. But we also capture its arrival time. When the mobile client automatically updates these, and we actually see you're going to have to travel 4.21 miles, we've got some estimated information. That's all created behind the scenes. And again, you don't see this most of the time. It's there. So those are our entities that we look at. Our bookable resource booking and our resource requirement. These are our two key entities that we need to be able to use. So let's look at resource schedule, universal resource scheduling. So I'm going to describe Microsoft, as I say, it's separated out the scheduling engine from the app functionality. But what that means is we can now use that scheduling functionality with any custom entity. For me, this is just marvelous. There's so many scenarios this opens up. I can schedule any work, any task, anything from any entity. I could schedule leads if I want, or opportunities, or create any custom entities. So I'm going to describe the steps to do that. How we enable an entity for scheduling. So this is basically the scenario. We have to go and install universal resource scheduling. Now, at the moment, you can't install resource scheduling solutions separately. I don't know of a way unless anybody does. You normally have to install field service or project service or customer service scheduling separately, and then uninstall the other parts. Now, scheduling works off latitude and longitude. So you first of all have to enable the Big Maps API. I've already done that. You just have to say, yes, you do. Because the reason you have to enable it is because you're pushing data out, because it's using the Big Maps API. It's using Azure's capability to do all its location and distance work. Now, there are certain fields you need on your entity, and the most important are latitude and longitude. So you need to create those on your entity. You'll need to create those one-to-many relationships from to your entity to resource requirement and to bookable resource booking. You remember, if we're just going to slot our entity in place of work order, you saw the relationship there. So we need those relationships. And then all we need to do is enable the entity. It's fairly straightforward. And then set up some what we call the booking setup metadata. That's really some defaults on how it's going to use. So up until a few weeks ago, well, up until the latest release, you could just go into your Dynamics 365 Admin Center and go and select the core service scheduling. So if you had sales or customer service, I think this was here, and you could just go and install it. And this added in that customer service scheduling. And that will give you two apps. It'll give you the service scheduling app and the resource scheduling app. It seems to me now, I did a trial last week, that actually the core service scheduling is installed automatically now. Well, it was on the trial that I did. So this trial I'm using here, I didn't need to do this. So it may be there already. Yeah, that's the one. So depending where you are, because I applied the Wave 1 update, depends where you are. So this could all change. It may be there. You may not need to do this. And you'll see, if you look in your solutions installed, you'll see this dynamic scheduling installed as a solution. So you should look for that. Connecting to Big Maps, I do in the resource scheduling app. I go click into scheduling, go to administration, and I go and enable that. Just turn it on and quickly. It's the resource scheduling app settings administration. Turn that on. Then these are the fields I need on my custom entity. I need my latitude and longitude. They're floating point fields. -90 to +90 for latitude, -180 to +180 for longitude. Duration is a whole number field, because it needs to be an integer, so it's number of minutes. we need start date and end date, date and time, because we need to tell the scheduling engine what where we need to search to or from, or from and to. And then we also need this field called work location, which is either on-site or remote. So for what we need to do, if I'm going out to deliver work, you need that to be set to on-site. That's a global option set you just have to add into your entity. So it's called work location, the global option set. So you add those, make sure you've got those fields. This is the minimum you need to be able to schedule. And as I said, you can create, you need two one-to-many relationships to the resource requirement entity and the bookable resource booking entity. And I also tend to add my entity as lookups onto the form so I can go navigate around my interface. You also need to do some mappings. There's some fields that need to be copied down. Typically it's latitude, longitude, and those fields I've just laid out. Now, you don't have to create the relationships. The system will create them for you when we come to enable the entity, but I think it's always good practice to create my own entities and my own relationships. So do that rather than let it do it, just because of the way it names them. And then all I do is I go and enable the entity for resource scheduling. I select this is in the resource scheduling app in the administrations area. I select my entity. And then if I've created those one-to-many relationships, I just select them. If I don't select them, it'll create them for me. That simply. We're going to go through this step by step in a second. And then we set up this booking metadata, which says basically what are my default values. So we'll work through that. And we're going to do my little demo now where I'm doing a little bit of quality control. So this is a scenario I found quite a lot. Field service works really well in certain scenarios where you've got multiple jobs per day, lots and lots of jobs, but also where you're pricing by the minute the way you do the products and services. If it fits the work order, great. If it doesn't, actually customizing work order is really hard. So what we often do is create our own custom entity. I did a project last year where I think we ended up with 5 entities we were scheduling. So let's just go through step by step how to actually do this. I'm going to demo enabling my entity and show it working. So I'm going to share my screen again.
Just while you're loading that, there's a question may fit in now. About,
yep.
Is it possible to use resource scheduling without location, for example, done online?
Well, this is what the customer service scheduling does out the box. That's very much for, yes, we're coming into people coming to work, you're sat at the office. So that's provided. So yes, you could use this. You could, yes, you could use it, but for me, the customer service one would do that. But yeah, for web demo requests, yes, you could use this for web demo requests. So yes, you just have to watch out just to make sure you set things up correctly, because it has a real tendency to not retrieve anybody if you've not got things set up correctly. Setting up scheduling is particularly tricky. You make sure you've got to do everything in the right order and set all the data. It's much more. I always say scheduling and field service are more like an ERP implementation than a CRM implementation, because you have to do lots of configuration of data to get it to work. I've got it down now. I could probably set up a demo in a couple of days. That's how long it takes me. This took me most of yesterday to get set up. So what I'm going to do is I've got my custom entity. Let's go just share what I've done. Here's my solutions. I've created a little. So I've got an entity here called job, and we're going to be booking our job entity. So that's what we're going to be doing. And if I look at this entity, it's got a whole. I've got all those fields. Oh, I've just managed to lose my entire screen. Why is that? So I've got all the fields here, latitude, longitude here. I've got relationships. I've got one-to-many relationships to book and resource booking and resource requirements. I've already created those. So I've done a whole load of work. So just to speed this up. In terms of my setting, we're going to go to settings. We'll just have a quick look in here. Oops, administration. And then if I click on my scheduling parameters, we'll see here that I've enabled the entity for scheduling. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to schedule that work order. It's not playing today. So see, I've got connector maps, yes. I also got some other settings here. Let me go back. This is where we enable our resource scheduling for entities. If I click on this, you'll see it's already got listed project service activities. So service activities, the one using the customer service scheduling. You schedule service appointments. So if you want to look at maybe do what you do for IT technicians, you can use this. Work order is for field service and project is for PSA. And you can also schedule appointments as well. So I'm just going to select my entity. Job. Once I've done that, I'm going to select my relationship. So I've already got 2 relationships there. Pick that. And I just hit publish. That's all I do. And are you seeing my pop-up screen? I'm going to. It's popped up in a separate window. Let me copy it into a new tab so you can see it. So this is the only thing I dislike. It pops this open as a separate window. So this is a defaults. How do I populate the resource requirement record? That's actually what this is for. So what I'm going to do is set some defaults. What's my default duration? I'm going to say it's 45 minutes. And we just have to set some statuses. So what's my default committed status? Maybe it's so we have a whole load of booking status. I think we're going to choose committed. And these are data. These aren't option sets. This is data. I need just to maybe just have a look at a different view. Pick one I want. So I've got multiple committed. So I've got some duplicate data here. So I may need to just go. Oh, that's not that one. Okay, I think just need to select some data here. I'm going to choose active, cancel status. I just say what they are. They're just cancelled. This has to be cancelled. Most of them are pretty obvious. Completed as well. So that's going to be the completed. I may just want to go change that. I want to go to. I think it might be that one. Okay, so I'm just going to set that up. And then what I have to do here is automatically spotted the fields. These are the fields that I need on the resource requirement. So the from date, the to date, the duration, the latitude, longitude. Because I've set the data types up and called them the right things, automatically map them. So I don't have, I just pick any date time field, duration if it's found those. Otherwise, I'd have to make sure I select those. It hasn't picked territory because I haven't done a territory lookup because you can use territory management. And all I need to do is click save and close. That's now done. And I've now configured this. So what we're going to do now is switch back to, if I go into my entity, I've actually added in my entity on here. So I'm just going to go in and I'm going to create another job. So I'm going to go to the Microsoft Reactor this time. I'm going to create, instead of work, I'm going to create a job. Add a new job. So it's job. And you see it's automatically pulled through my latitude and longitude from the account because I created it from the account. I've actually got some business rules and other things on here just to populate the start and end date, duration. Okay, I'm just going to leave this as it is right now. I'm going to come back and look at skill. So I've created that. Created that job. If I now go to the schedule board, we will now see that job on the schedule board. It should now appear here. No, it hasn't. Okay, let me just go back to the job. It won't appear there yet. I've got to do something else. But if I go back into this job, you can see we've got a book button. So I'm going to try and book it from here. So when I click on the book button, this is another way of scheduling using the schedule assistant. And again, it's popped up in another screen. So I'm just going to copy that URL into another tab so you can see it working. So this is what actually happened. It popped up in a different window and it's like a mini bit of the schedule board. And it's here. what it's done is pulled the information from the job. The requirement is that the details of the job are down here, the duration, the from date, the to date. But notice it's pulled back everybody, and it's pulled back Chris. Let's pick Chris, and it's basically picked Chris. It's picked any time. It's picked the first person. So I'm just going to select Chris and say, okay, let's book him. So I can immediately just go very easily book anybody. Chris is now booked. Yeah, if I close that down and go back to the schedule board and just refresh it, and we just scroll down a little bit, there you see Chris is there. So this booking has been created. So I created it, I created the job, and then I booked it using the book capability. It didn't appear down here yet. I'm going to show you in a minute how we would do that. Make sure it appears there. So we have our booking. So if I can click on that and I can see the detail of what it's about. So if I look behind, let's look at the resource requirement. A resource requirement got created. So if I look at that resource requirement, just like we did with the work order, we get a resource requirement created, and we see the detail of it in terms of scheduling, the time, the latitude, longitude are there. There's nothing on field service. Actually, did I copy the work order? I didn't actually yet. I don't think I did a lookup to the. I haven't done the thing where I moved the lookup to the job onto this form. I should have done. So I can't do my navigation around. And again, my bookings, I go for Chris. We'll see there's a booking. We see it's gone to Chris. Booking status as planned. And we see all those details again, how it was scheduled, time, estimated travel duration, how long it's going to take him to do it. So that's got created behind the scenes automatically for me. So so you can see, I didn't take much. I mean, creating the entity, creating the fields, creating two relationships, enabling it, and wow, I can book things. That's great, isn't it? But and that's fine in a lot of ways, but we can do better. And this is what I really want to talk about next. It's the fine tuning, as I call it, making it actually really usable. But that job did not appear at the bottom of the list. And that bottom of the list on the schedule board is a list not of bookings or work orders or jobs. It's actually a list of resource requirements. So what I need to do is I need to create a view, and it uses views to do this. I need to create a view and add that view onto the schedule board so it's visible. So I've already created the view. I'm going to just show and add it onto the schedule board. Also, you saw when I was selecting it. If I go back, you select multiple. I can select all the different booking statuses because you have booking statuses for field service, booking status for project service, booking status for customer service, and I want different booking statuses. At the moment, if I was going there, I'll get a list of absolutely every booking status available. And the way we handle that is we add an option set onto the booking status entity. Additionally, the out of the box thing that I just did was by creating the entity for naming the entity for scheduling doesn't take account of roles or skills, because if you remember on the resource requirement, the skills that were required weren't on the resource requirement, they're on a separate entity, which is actually called the resource requirement characteristic entity. So I need to populate that, and if I start to populate that, the way I do that is with Power Automate. So what I do is actually I turn on Power Automate to automatically populate the resource requirement and the skill. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use Power Automate to do that for me. And then I just need to change the update booking setup metadata just to reflect that all those changes are made. And I'm also going to enable Quick Book, which is one of my favorite features in scheduling. So let's go through and demo this. And I'll just show you before I need to switch screen, don't I? I'll just show you what I mean by the schedule. If I right click on here and do change status, we get a whole load of all the different options. You see all this? I want to control this. I want to change what options. I only want the options that are relevant to the job. Whereas if I click on the work order change status, you'll see it's got different, it's actually restricted down. I haven't restricted it on my list. So I'm going to go and do that. So what we're going to do is just let me go through and sort this out. So let's go in. The first thing is I just go into my entities and I'll just show you, if I look at resource requirement, I have a view that I've created. So I've got a view called unscheduled job requirements that I've just created, just show me the information I need. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go to the schedule board. I'm going to customize it. Come on. If I scroll down the bottom into requirement panels, it's the bit at the bottom. I'm going to add in. So I'm going to select my requirement views. Where are you there? You should see my unscheduled job requirements. Here we are. Let's just add that in. Say I'm going to call it jobs. I'm going to add that in. Apply that. So what we see now is we now see a little tab for jobs appeared at the bottom here. Now if I was to click on that, if I had a job that I hadn't created yet, so nothing's appearing there because I've scheduled the one. It disappears. What happens is when you schedule a resource requirement or an entity, it disappears off this list. So we'll see one go in there later. So that's the first step. I'm just going to show you my booking status. So I go to my booking statuses. Where are you, booking statuses? I need to be in the resource scheduling app for that. This is one of the things you find yourself swapping between the two apps all the time. So I've got my booking statuses. Here they are. So what I've actually done is I've actually done this. I've actually gone in and created an option set called job booking status. So we look here. So if I just sort A to Z, so here I've got 4 statuses: planned, working, finished, and cancelled. Cancelled I'm sharing with all the other ones, but I basically want to hide all these other ones. So what I need to do is I need to go grab the booking status field, and I need actually the name of the field. So if I just go into this, we'll see I need to get this option set here. I need the schema name of this. So we'll grab that in a minute. Let me get flow up. I need to go and show you Power Automate. I created a little flow. I'll just show you this flow. It's a simple flow. What I've done just for the demonstration is I've created a flow that I'm just going to start when the record's selected. So I'm going to start this from the job. So basically when the job is selected, a manual on selected record, and then have to, because when you do on select, it doesn't give you all the fields. I've retrieved the job, and then all I'm going to do is populate the resource requirement. So I'm going to use Power Automate to do this, populate all the key fields, what it did before, so mappings and other things. And I'm also going to create the resource requirement, the characteristic record, which is the skill. So I'm going to populate that as well, just to show it working. So we've got that flow. We'll just make sure that runs later successfully. And Power booking status. So what I need to do now is go and update my booking metadata. Not that one. Enable entities. I need to just go select my job, and this is going to pop out another screen. So I'm just going to copy the URL into another tab so you can see it. So first thing I do is I need to put in the schema name of that job status option set. So I'll just copy that in there. Logical name. Then down here, I need to say disable requirement auto create for bookings, because in the past, what it did when I did it originally, it auto created the requirement. I actually don't want it to create the requirement. I'm going to create the requirement through Power Automate, so I turn that to yes. I'm also going to enable QuickBook. So I think that's it. If I just go back to my screenshot, I think that was all the steps. So let's save and close that. Let's now go into, let's create another job. So go to accounts. I'll do it from Microsoft. I'll do the same thing again, but we're going to add a skill in. So go to jobs and create a new job. Find job. Okay, start date, let it do. But I'm going to actually pick a skill this time. So I'm going to pick, I've got an IoT skill. Pick my IoT skill this time and hit save. So that's going to generate, I've got everything there. Right. I just have a look on related records. So you've got related booking resource requirements. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to run my flow. So I've got my flow called create resource requirements. So that's going to go run. And I'm going to get my resource requirement. Let's have a look, see if it's got created. There it is. So it's created that very quickly. It's just have a quick look at that. Make sure it looks fine. It's got the skill in it as a separate record. This is the advantage you do by using Power Automate. So now that looks right. Let's go see if we can schedule it. So I'm now going to go to my schedule board. And I'm going to click on that jobs tab, and hopefully we'll now see that job appear. It actually appears here now as well, because I've got a requirement. If I click on jobs, it just filter it. So there it is. Now when I click on select it, we should see it bounce around. So let's just show, whoops. Okay, I'm just going to change. It says, so let's say that's where it is. It's finding it's in there. Some really nice things actually. Where's Andrew? Where's Andrew? He's there. So I click on find availability, and what it's doing now, notice it's only found me the people with the right skills. So it's now found me, Andrew, Alison, and Chris. And I can say, yes, I'm going to book Andrew in. So keep him busy today. And there it's done. Now booked in. And I'm going to right click only. If you look at the statuses, I've now just got the statuses that are relevant to my entity. They make much more sense. And again, if I change it, say we're working on it, so Andrew's there, we've got color coded. That's it. You can actually change the colors by status. You actually want to create your own status for each entities. We did a project last year where we had 5 different entities being scheduled this way. So the 5 tabs, 5 for different types of work. And the color coding made it really easy for our schedulers to be able to handle different scenarios. So this is a pretty fast run through of how to do it in a period of time. So I'm just going to round up now and just explain what I've done. Hopefully you see what's happened. Oh, sorry. So that was the demo, and you can just schedule just by name of the entity, but the real beauty comes when you start doing those little fine-tuning steps. They're documented. They're actually not really well documented. Those, what you need to do to add it to the schedule board, what do you need to do for the booking status and colors. So hopefully you'll see this information you'll see the steps. And I'm going to be blogging around about this at some point. There's a couple of links there for resources to Microsoft Docs and where you go. Sarah Larquist's got actually a pretty good couple of blog posts on setting this up. And also there's my blog site where I'll be posting. Just a little bit of advertising. Joe, the CRM chap Griffin, and I are running an exam study group for MB400 starting this Friday. That's the link for it. I'll post that link in the chat in a minute. And those are my contact details if you have any questions. But if you have anything, please just ask now. So has anybody got any questions? And please do your feedback.
Julian, I've got a question.
Who's this?
It's Richard Collins.
Hi, Richard.
You're showing sort of real-time sort of booking applications here. How easily could this be used for, I mean, a scenario that I've come across, which is sort of booking training courses and workshops and one-to-one sessions sort of out into the future?
Yep, it's not for that.
Sorry? It's
not really for that.
No.
You could use it. I suppose you could use it. It's something I've actually been looking at. It's on my list. In fact, actually for my customer last year, they were going out doing work on sites, but they are also training people to be assessors in their own offices.
Mm-hmm.
And so they used it. We actually created a custom entity for that. It didn't work. It worked, but it was much more manual drag and drop. The issue is you've got to say you're running a training course. You've got a certain number of places. And this actually, I mean, the customer service scheduling might be able to do it. I need to have a look at what that's capable of.
Okay. I suppose, yeah, it's interesting that it's not a sort of shoe-in. I think it's the, it's your immediate reaction to that.
Yeah, it is possible, but I don't think it's not. It's really, the scheduling is really looking for something else. It's about finding the right person with the right skills, not about, okay, I got to book rooms and I need to manage across I think it's a different scheduling scenario.
Yeah. No, I can see that. Okay,
you
thanks.
could use it. You could use it. I mean, we did for this because they were using the resource scheduling for something else. We just added this in, and they were able. And what they were able to, because they actually need to schedule the instructor, who was also going out and doing work. So we needed to have it on the schedule board just to block them out. But then we did. I wrote some custom entities to actually individual people booking onto those courses, and we managed the capacity separately with a bit of code.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Yeah, and in answer to the question, yes, you can change from metric to imperial and back again, miles versus kilometers. I'd actually change mine to miles because we're in the UK here.
Any more questions for anyone? Well, there's still people
I
here.
have just one question.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah.
Yes, my name is Emmanuel. I just want to find out if it can be integrated with the portal, whereby users can book from the portal, can book appointments from the portal.
Yeah, field service. There's an add-in to the partner portal template. You have to use the partner portal template, and then there's an add-in for field service.
Oh.
So, but that's about work orders. Yes, you could. I mean, the portal can do anything because it just sits on top of your entities. So I could put my portal on top of and display my job entity, allow people to create them. And we've done that. I did that last year. Portal.
What if we don't have field services? Then we can do that. We can't integrate it.
No, you'd have to do it all yourself. So you'd have to go and say, because in the portal you can expose any entity form. But what you can't do in the portal right now is do the scheduling. A customer would have to create the record. It would then appear on the schedule board.
Right.
There is an API to retrieve your list of available slots. I'm not sure if that's available in the portal yet. There may be a licensing issue about it. But it is. I've been waiting for them to release that. His release, and I've been building. I built a Canvas app that goes off and calls an Azure function to go and retrieve the list of available slots.
I think it's a custom action, so you can call it through a web API.
Is it custom action now? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
But I'm not sure. It's not available within the portal, as far as I'm aware.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, you could. What would really be nice if a customer could put their details in and it finds them somebody.
Okay.
They schedule themselves because they put the details in. It gives them a list of available time slots. I actually built a system in 2008 using the old service scheduling, which did that because we actually had the API for it then. I built a website to do that. I mean, that was 12 years ago.
Okay. Thank you.
But yeah, you're gonna have to be writing some code probably.
Okay. Thank you.
If people are still here, could you just unmute your mics and just give Julian a clap and say well done and thank you for this time.
Thank you, Jules.
Yes, thank you.
Well done.
Great to see you.
Hopefully you'll now know how easy it is to schedule stuff.
Yeah, it was fabulous. Thank you very much for that.
Easy when you do it, Julian. Thanks.
Yeah, there's a bit of prep there.
There's some useful links in chat for people for the rest of the day. It's a bit of a break now for lunch, so do as you wish. If you want to talk to people whilst you're eating your lunch, there's a lobby. If not, we can see everybody else at 1:30 for Tattooed CRM guy and his Microsoft roadmap. But thank you very much, Julian.
I've just pasted the link to my study group in the chat.
Yeah.
I meant to do that earlier. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll stay on for